I thought y'all were, what do they call it, gaslighting me? You know,
We would never do that to you, Tom.
no, not you guys.
At least not before you suggested it.
So welcome back, everyone, to the podcast. It is so good to see you all, to know that you're listening. We are all here. Guys, are we all vaccinated? I don't remember. Thumbs up.
I am.
Thumbs up. Thumbs
Guess
up. Okay.
what?
Yeah, it all depends, right? We are all vaccinated. So all we really want to spread is the good news and potlucks. And we can't do potlucks over Zoom, so we're going to try good news through a podcast. I am John, and I am here with our good friend Tom. Tom, how are you this morning?
Evidently, I'm doing okay now.
Evidently. Okay.
Yeah, well, for
What
everybody,
evidence are you presenting?
yeah, I've been in and out Wi-Fi ways before we started this. So,
Okay, so if Tom freezes, you know what's going on.
yeah, if I freeze, I'm gone.
Very good. And Wade is here. Wade, what's going on, brother? Just like that, yes?
Good.
That's the kind of first 15 minutes we've had together, you all.
I'm too good, man. I'm too good.
Amen. And Brad's here with us. Brad, how the hallelujah are you?
I am good, man. I am good. God is good and I'm good. And, you know, we're all good together.
You got lots of books.
He
What's
does.
that?
Lots of books.
I know. One of these days I'm going to get around to reading them.
Oh,
They're really not real. They're just fake. They're facade type thing. If you pull one of them out, the thing opens up and it goes into another room in there. I've got a poker table.
That's how you get to the back cave, I guess. Right?
That's it. That's right. Yeah.
That a Methodist themed tissue box at the very top.
You know, that was one of those things that a lady in a church, oh gosh, 25 some odd years ago made for me and gave it to me. And it's one of those things that fits down over the tissue box and yeah, cross and flame thing. And I put it up there because we don't buy that kind of tissue here. And it's like, why sit it on my desk if it's just going to be empty there? So anyway, that's
somebody made me last year.
Is that right? You want to match that? I can give you. You can make bookends or something. I don't know. Yeah.
I was asking about the vaccination because I came across 3 stories this morning about vaccination efforts and what some people, in some cases, some countries are trying to do to get people vaccinated. For example, in Romania, if you visit Dracula's castle, they are willing to give you your vaccine just for visiting. And I'm looking at some pictures and you can imagine Dracula's fangs. Instead of fangs, it's 2 needles. Kind of cool. Because apparently people in Romania are pretty hesitant to get the vaccine. As a matter of fact, what did I read? Like they are the least hesitant over there in that part of the world to get the vaccine. What's that?
They're the least hesitant or most hesitant?
Excuse me, most hesitant. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I was thinking, 2 fangs as needles isn't exactly inspiring me to get anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
That vampire culture may be driving.
Yeah.
That may have been how COVID started, actually, you know.
Well, it had to do with bats, didn't it? I mean, gee whiz. Wasn't that it?
Yes, you see. Maybe I'm looking at a different story, but yes, I did read that apparently those Romanians aren't very eager to get there. So that's one way. So then I saw this other story that, there's a lot of perks that different counties and states around here have tried to, as there's, offering cash, savings bonds, booze, and even free marijuana with your COVID-19 vaccine. Yep. And then I read this one as well, that you can take your car or truck and drive at Talladega Super Speedway if you get your COVID-19 vaccine. They'll let you drive on the speedway.
I have not been vaccinated yet, and I'm on my way.
Which
there
one
you
of
go.
those 3 are you going to?
Huh?
Which one of those 3 are you heading towards right now?
Did you say
Probably
Talladega?
not Romania.
Okay, very good.
Talladega,
Yeah.
baby.
Okay, very
Yeah.
good. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, trying to get people convinced. And what's the other story I read too is that now a lot of states are telling the government to stop sending so many vaccines because
They're throwing them away. Yeah.
having to throw them away. Yeah. So
Right.
the desire for them. So anyway, so let's get out of this. Go get vaccinated. Let's take care of this. And we can all attest that Wade did not tell us right before this that he was vaccinated. So he is not vaccinated.
As far as you know.
As far as
Where's my mask? I got to get my mask on here. Hang on.
got to be a filter for that somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Guys, tell the truth. Do you still play with blocks? I mean, it's okay.
Blocks?
Blocks? No. Did you ever
Like
have
Legos?
I don't even have a sassy retort to that. What kind of question is that?
Well, you see, Tom went straight to Legos. I mean, Brad went straight to Legos, and that's good, actually. Did you ever hear of Constructs? Was that something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had those.
Diplo?
Duplo.
I don't know that one.
Was it Duplo? Yeah.
Duplo.
Aren't those the big ones?
Yeah, they're great big ones.
Legos.
And then there's also Lincoln Logs, right?
No, it definitely didn't get Lincoln Logs.
Lincoln Logs. So
I had Lincoln Logs, yeah.
We used to
I had
build
an erector set, but that's a totally different thing.
Erector set, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
build Lincoln log cabins and then light them on fire.
That sounds about Wade. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So anyway, I asked because there is, I don't know if you know, an international Lego Mafia, guys. Yes.
So it's organized.
It is pretty organized, yes, actually, because this is not just a kid's toy. There are grown men and probably women as well who both collect and or play with Legos still. And I don't know when's the last time you bought Legos, but they can be pretty expensive.
They're super.
Yeah.
Because now everything's a kit, right? You don't just buy everything, by itself. You have to buy, the package and da-da-da. And then the other thing about it apparently is, then they stop making these packages, which makes the set all the more valuable, particularly to those who collect them. And so there is, yes, an organized sort of ring of people that purchase these items and sell them both legally and illegally throughout the world. So you thought Mafia was just about drugs, weapons, and other criminal services. No.
How you doing?
It's coming to a Lego land near you.
Interesting how you describe it as criminal services.
Yeah.
Another service industry. It happens to be criminal.
Everybody thinks of criminals when you think of Legos, right? I mean,
I think broken
how you
hips is
doing?
what I think of.
yeah, broken what?
Broken hips. I had a lady in my first church who stepped on her
Kneecaps.
grandchildren's Legos and fell and broke her hip.
Wow.
Oy. Kneecaps.
Yep. And so I remember seeing a cartoon somewhere that is literal hell. It will be covered in Legos, Forget the fire, forget the brimstone. It's going to be walking on Legos for the rest of eternity.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So anyway, yes, the story is that this Lego Mafia was busted by French police. And so, yeah, I actually been holding on to the story for about a month. This came out in the beginning of April.
They were busted?
Yes, they were busted, man. I'm telling you, this is real deal, man.
Wow.
No word who the Godfather is.
What were they doing?
Selling everything, man. I'm trying to tell you.
That's illegal?
The way they were, apparently.
Yeah.
Are you sure
Black market stuff.
You sure they weren't crushing it up and snorting it?
No, I don't think so.
But even that wouldn't be illegal.
Maybe
just stupid.
It is just stupid. Not illegal. It's just stupid.
I'm not going to tell the mafia that they're stupid. I'm sorry. No, sorry.
So it has a huge profit potential, high dollar items, and unlike many other expensive goods, Lego sets don't have serial numbers or any other identifying information. So, they're stealing them. It's thievery, Aid. That is illegal.
It wasn't a forgery?
No. No. So anyway, I just want you guys to be careful. If you guys have Legos at home, not only do you have to be careful not to step on them, break a hip, but you also have to be careful that there's a Lego mafia out there ready to get you.
Now I got to call my insurance agent and take out an extra rider on my policy.
Anyway, so I don't know that story connects to what I really wanted to talk about. It kind of does. I assume maybe the Lego Mafia really likes their work, and maybe they're a little burnout right now because they got caught and they're having to reorganize. But I came across an article that says why we may be measuring burnout all wrong. And I don't know. I just thought it was interesting because you hear that word a lot. Just in the world in general, but even in church, people talk about clergy burnout, but we talk about burnout for our volunteers as well. And everybody, it's just a word we all know, and you hear it a lot. And what this article does is kind of break down the difference between sort of the popular sense of burnout and what the scientific definition of burnout is, to kind of tell the difference. So anyway, you all are very non-burnt out people, and you read the article. Except for Brad there. First impressions, guys. What did you take away from their definition or what they were trying to get across?
The first question.
See if that helps.
Yeah.
Should be doing Jeopardy. Do, do, do,
I
do.
used to have that one. I don't have it anymore. Preacher number one.
I think it's fascinating. I think it's interesting that we get caught up in claiming stuff that isn't, and I don't know how much of that has become the trend of our culture, that we just claim, maybe, and I'm saying claim, and that maybe that's the wrong word. We are, I don't even know how to describe it. We are hypochondriacs, and in so many ways. And that is this just another example of that we become so geared toward, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I don't want to do this anymore. Well, that's burnout. And what I'm hearing is this guy in Maslow, or this lady in Maslow, come out with an inventory to try to measure that, say, what really is burnout, and try to define it scientifically instead of just as an emotional response. I thought she had a great article here. This whole article is pretty on target, especially with pandemic.
I don't think we're as burnt out as we are. I mean, early in the article, it talks about people are working longer and more and all this kind of stuff. And to me, that sounds like we're over functioning. We're not taking care of. We're taking care of that above all else. And to me, we got to kind of take care of ourselves and how we exist within whatever it is that we think we're burned out from.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, I mean, like, I don't know about you guys, but when I first got into ministry, and John, you were in licensing school with me, and we heard from all these people who were teaching us at licensing school about what a terrible, in a lot of ways, what a terrible profession it is to be a pastor. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And
I wrote down notes, so yeah.
And once I got in, I'm like, well, the problem is you guys are letting the job work you instead of you working the job. And you can't give away what you don't have, and not even for a little while. And so if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not, taking time off and, taking care of mind, body, spirit, I don't see how you can avoid being exhausted all the time.
Yeah. So one of the things she says is people use burnout as a synonym for tired, and they're missing the point that there's a world of difference between these two states being tired or exhausted and being burnt out. People use burnout as a synonym for tired, and they're missing the point He gives the example of obstetricians who often work chaotic schedules. They're delivering babies at all hours of the night, and they're totally exhausted, but they're bringing new life into the world and making people's lives better, and they care about that work. That's overextended and exhausted, but it's not burnout. So essentially, burnout has more to do than just being tired or even exhausted. There's two other elements in a second. But Tom, did you have anything to add to that so far?
Well, yeah, and I was reading some of the statements, and one of the things when it describes that burnout is when you have a hard time entering the building or even seeing a building like that, and you're just your knee-jerk reaction is, I don't want to be in there, and I don't want to be in there anymore. So I look at this, and I'm also kind of balancing that between burnout and grief, because sometimes the tiredness or the burnout is really dealing with some grief issues, and I'd say in 2020 and 2021, going through that process, that COVID has definitely brought some grief issues. In fact, Memorial Weekend, I really want to focus on the issue of grief, because people, one is we have a hard time naming it. We don't recognize it, and two, we have a hard time expressing it in healthy ways. And so it may show up. Grief may show up as exhaustion. It may show up as the feeling of burnout. So that's kind of what I'm processing as I'm going through the article. Currently got it up on my phone, just kind of following along with what we're talking about.
Yeah, that can be a part of it, right? And how that all works together. And that's why it's important. I think the writer Kate Morgan is making this distinction, because you need to know what you're dealing with, right? And so, to your point,
right,
Brad, I think, and they say it here, fewer people can report all three conditions of burnout. It's not an epidemic burnout. It's overdiagnosed, right? And it reminds me of, a few years ago, everybody got into the habit of saying, oh man, I have no attention span. I have ADD. And apparently now everybody has ADD, just because they feel like they can't concentrate, right? And if you talk to somebody, or even to Tom's point, people say, oh, I'm not feeling good, I'm feeling depressed. Well, maybe you're feeling sad, but if you speak to somebody who is depressed, or you speak to somebody who has ADD, you don't want what they have, right?
No.
You want to be able to clarify that that's not what you're dealing with. And, and even for the sake of honoring, exactly what they're walking through, don't trivialize it just by saying, you're feeling a little sad today. You're feeling, no, you're not. My wife was real big on that with our kids as well, because, they're learning terms, and they would say stuff. She'd say, no, don't say that, because you're not experiencing that. And maybe it is an overdiagnosis. So, all right, let's talk about this real quick then. If burnout is not just being tired, what is it? He mentions the professor of psychology at the University of California, Berkeley, Christina Maslach, who developed the Maslach Burnout Inventory, or MBI, to define and measure the condition of burnout. And she says there are 3 criteria, which I cannot find right now. Where is it? Wrote it down. Let me do that. Here it is. All right, 3 criteria. The first is exhaustion or total lack of energy, which I think that's what a lot of people, they feel exhausted, so I'm burnt out. Well, no, because then you couple that with cynicism or negativity toward your job, right? One or both of those. And then finally, will you have reduced efficacy or success at work? So go ahead, Brad.
Keep going. You're doing fine. I'm right along with you. I'm reading this.
Okay. And so the point was that, there are people who aren't burnt out because they don't have all 3 of these criteria. They don't, exhibit any expression of either 3. But it doesn't mean that maybe some people aren't on the way. And again, this is why this is important as well, to recognize these different things. and that we all, there's an index to all this. And so where do we find ourselves on that index? Oh, there it is. Overextended, ineffective, and disengaged. Three profiles to best understand where we could be. So anyway, so having this sense of being exhausted or tired, being cynical or negative about your work, and then not being able to have success at work. If you have tendencies or examples of all of those at the same time, then that is real burnout. What do you do when you experience burnout like that? And the one line that really got me too is all of this is a huge problem because true burnout can't be fixed with a vacation or a wellness retreat.
Right.
And I think that's the line that got me, that I wanted us to talk about this, because we work with people who have jobs other than the church, and then we ask them to do jobs at the church as well. And a lot of times we use that term burnout, and we don't want to burn them out, and we don't want to be burnt out. Where do you guys see the parallel, or the connection rather, with this idea of burnout and the criteria that go with it, and our ministry as the church, and even our walk with God? Where do these ideas interlap?
Well,
I think Wade hit. Go ahead, Wade. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I was going to say, I think Wade hit the nail on the head before when he was talking about that we tend to think that it's one thing, but it's really not. And the reality is that we aren't considering that body, mind, and spirit trinity of things that we need to be in tune with. And I think that's a big issue for a lot of folks, is that we get tired in our body, our minds get tired, but our spirits are the ones that have never really been nourished. And I think that's a big focus for the church and for clergy, especially for our church members to take into consideration. I like the way that she put it, as it's a spectrum, and it is a measuring tool to tell us how far along are we on that journey toward it, or are we even on the spectrum? So if we're really not burned out, but we're just tired, that's sort of on the spectrum, but not really. But when you get to the point where you don't want to do anything or have anything to do with anybody that has anything to do with what you used to do or supposed to be doing, you're pretty far down the path. And this is a tool to really get us to identify that, hopefully before we get too far gone, where a break or a retreat or some sort of intervention can help us.
Well, I like what she said about there's a sentence down here. There's this gigantic self-care industry out there, all focused on how to cope with that stress, but to prevent or reduce or eliminate burnout. It's not about fixing people, it's about fixing the job. And
Right.
I've had several instances where I went to my church and said, I can't work like this anymore. We got to do this differently. And I think that doesn't just apply to pastors of the church. I think our leadership can sometimes get burnt out. If we end up in a situation where it's always the same people doing the same thing, and a lot of those things aren't really about the mission of the church. They're about the maintenance of the church. I find that people get burnt out that way. And I think it's time. I think it's past time, and I think it's always time for the church to be about doing the kingdom work and not the
busy work.
Well, I mean, at least not primarily. It feels like a lot of times in our churches that both for the lay people and for the clergy, that we get really focused on sort of maintaining the administrative function of the church ahead of
the institution.
Well, ahead of kingdom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
I have a lot more meetings in church about what's going on inside the administrative function of the church than I do have meetings about what's going on in our neighborhood.
Right.
Those meetings would be a lot more interesting to me, and I think to most people. So, I mean, that's just one example, but I think you can structure your job. I think we're learning this in the COVID era, that, maybe we don't have to be in an office 8 hours a day, and maybe we can still be productive. That obviously doesn't work for every single job, but I think coming out of COVID, we're going to see a lot less real estate as part of the major function of companies, and a lot more focus on sort of the well-being of the worker and the conditions under which they work. Because what we're finding is that people are still productive at home. In fact, maybe more productive at home in some ways.
On the practical side, is the overhead comes down when when you move the office to the house, and people are happier. And I know at least a couple of situations where a person is doing the job that he wants to do, but only when I know someone who basically quit the job because he was having to go travel to the office, which was a week away from his family, because his home was one place and his work was another, and he really enjoyed the work when he was doing it, but he hated being separated from his family. But once the guys figured out, well, that's what it takes to keep you as an employee or as a part of us. Well, and he loves the new situation. He loves being home. He loves the work that he does, and it always could have been done at home. But now we're rethinking how things should be. And as a pastor, talking about the administrative side is just this morning is talking of having a conversation about what's the next thing that might go wrong with the building that might be a big cost. And you're going, as a person who is, y'all have already asked, who has 5 more sermons to go, I'm going, well, as long as that lasts until July 1st, I'm good. Whatever the problem might be. But that's part
change it now.
Well, that's part of the thing that wears us out is maintaining both the internal structure of how we process decisions and the external structure, the buildings, and we move away from what really excites us, which is the gospel. The gospel is wonderful. It changed my life. I've seen it change other people's lives, but we don't have time to do that. And so we get worn out.
Yeah, that's great. I remember Bishop Snazy a couple of years ago at an annual conference. One of his presentations talked about, something to that effect. He went some church, they had built a new youth wing or something, and, had all the bells and whistles for it, and games and TVs and just the whole 9 yards. And then he started asking about where the kids, where the outreach for the kids, and it was like 5 kids or something like that, some low numbers. Like, well, we got busy with all that stuff, but we forgot the actual important stuff, was the actual reaching out. Like, we hadn't gotten there, we were too busy doing this. And it's the same thing here. And so that ties into that perfectly, because the article is talking about how do you come out of burnout? You change your environment, essentially, right?
Yeah.
That burnout isn't so much on the person. If we're talking about, work scenarios, it's the environment with which you work. And if we're talking about churches, our people, they learn from somewhere that churches should have 30 committees and be all about, meetings and all this stuff. Somebody led them there. And probably it was some of us who got caught up in leadership stuff and really, I don't know, right? But since we learned it, we can unlearn it. And it's up to us then to also talk about the environment that we create at church, right? Is it just, busy work, like you said, Brad, or is it anything that has any kind of transformative power within it at all? I did appreciate part of this is distinguishing, these 3 criteria that, you may have exhaustion, for example, and not the other 2, then you're not burnout. But if you do have exhaustion, you can address that, right? Maybe all you do need is a vacation, right? Or if you're not, maybe you're not exhausted and maybe you're not feeling all negative towards your work, but you're not being very successful. Well, you can do something to address that. You can, learn something. I don't know, right? Or if you're that middle one, if you're not, if you're feeling cynical or negative towards your job. There's something about that that you can address. It's when you have all three together that burnout
Shut down.
Yeah, burnout really takes you out of the game. And really her deal was that if you're at that point, the only thing that's really going to help you is change in environment. She talked about changing career. It's so drastic, but the point is changing our environments. And I think like what you all have said as church leaders, and connecting this to our church and the ministries that we have and how we order the church, is think about the environment we are creating. Right. We got people who work 40, 50 hours a week, and then we tell them that the best way that they can serve Jesus is to be on another committee and, do kind of, I don't want to say meaningless. I don't want to go that far, but certainly sometimes not very important work. And then we wonder why they don't want to show up.
Yeah.
But I was thinking one of the big changes that COVID brought around is meetings by Zoom. And so that at least cut out, 20, 30 minutes of having to get ready, get changed, cleaned up, and go to wherever the physical meeting was, and then go back home. Now basically you can sit in your pajamas and be at a meeting and be just fine. So
whereas before everybody looked at you funny, but now it's okay.
Yeah. Unless of course the memo was we're having pajama party tonight at the administrative council meeting. But and you're talking about environment, and the last paragraph in the article is that imagery, this the saying, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. And the comment was, well, instead of thinking in those terms, it's why don't you adjust the temperature or rearrange the kitchen? And I was thinking, if you can't stand the heat, make ice cream.
Very good.
One of the things that I've heard about Zoom meetings from some of my folks more recently is we just want to get together and have a meeting because we miss each other. And in my mind, I'm like, I wonder if meetings are necessary. I know they are. But if that's our primary connection to community, I think we can probably do a better job than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was thinking about that, and we turned, all four of us are clergy here. We have an annual conference coming up, which is our annual meeting of clergy and laity in our geographic region. The problem about what we're having to deal with in pandemic times is the fact that we are going to be doing this virtually instead of in person. And I think what's missing in all of that is how do you create that space virtually where we can have that time to just sit down and catch up with each other. I mean, I keep thinking when I first started in the church, 30 years ago, 35 years ago, the tradition of opening worship in annual conference was singing Wesley's hymn, "And Are We Yet Alive?" and see each other's face. There's something about not just getting together to handle the business of the church, which is, like I said, is important, but that connection and connectedness and reconnecting with one another is so important. I keep thinking, Tom, you're right. We're going to have a lot of changes here because of all of this, that we're no longer going to be as necessary to have facilities and stuff. And real estate's going to be a whole different ballgame when it comes to this. I think you said that, Wade. The truth of the matter is that we still are going to need places where we can meet with one another, where we can just be with one another. My biggest fear is that if we start doing everything virtually, we have isolated ourselves even more. And it's not because of the pandemic, it's because we're now shifting toward that as the norm. I think we still need to be in person with each other. I think we still need to be able to communicate and to share empathy and sympathy and concern and care and love for each other. It's really hard to do that virtually. I just think that's one of our big fears. I'm afraid that may be the redesign of the kitchen that a lot that a lot of our world is going to be coming to. And I hope that that's not the case.
Yeah, and as it relates to our own annual conference, I mean, the question, and I don't have the answer, and so it's easy.
I don't either.
It's easy for me to sit here and critique, but the question when I heard that we were doing virtual annual conference again, the question that I asked myself was, why are we doing this? Because I don't think, I think we're doing it because we're supposed to. I don't.
It's discipline for one thing, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. It's
Yeah.
But as we have tried to be creative with wins and losses along the way with all of that, I just feel like getting a huge group together online, to me, other than checking a box in the administrative function of the institution, I don't see why do you go to annual conference primarily? Why do you go to annual conference? I don't know about you guys, but I primarily like annual conference because I get to see my friends and sit down and look them in the face, hug their neck. And if that's not, and I don't know the answer, but if that's not what we're going to do, what's my takeaway? And is it worth sitting online for 16, 18, 24 hours, whatever it is? I got to be honest, it's going to be hard for me to sit in this chair that whole time. I may just
focus. Yeah.
And I know I'm supposed to, and I want to engage as much as I can, but I will tell you that I will be, if I sit in every one of those meetings for all of those hours, I'm going to be one mad hatter when I get out, and I just choose not to be. So I'll see you there some, but I'm not staying for that whole thing. It's not good for me.
No, it's not healthy for one thing. I think the other thing that when we say this, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Tom, but I tell folks in the church that annual conference is my church. That's the church to which I belong. That's where my membership resides. I need that connection with my brothers and sisters in Christ. And while, I love the congregation I'm serving here now, still there's this sense in which I need to be with my people, with my family.
But see, in all of that, as I'm listening to this, it's kind of the same response I would have to the people who want to meet in person, have administrative council, whatever, is, my goodness, create those spaces that don't need a meeting, an agenda.
Right.
And I think that's part of the thing, even for us as pastors. Some of there's folks, in fact, the person who was officiating my dad's memorial service, the first time I contacted him, he was with a group of pastors, and they were just hanging out together at Canyon Lake. And I think one of the things is we wait for those big events, and that only happens once a year, and then you have COVID come along, and it takes it away from us. And to me, it exposes the reality that it's something we wish for, but we don't build into. We don't. We're not intentional about doing the things that we desire, which is, part of the attraction here for our podcast is we're talking about things that we need to express with people who understand why we need to express it. We're all pastors. We're all pastors in Corpus Christi, so we're working in the same field. And this actually comes out. This push actually comes out of the fact that we used to be meeting on a regular basis at a restaurant, and then we got pushed to Zoom, and then we kind of extended to that to, we don't want to just talk about church things that are happening. We want to talk about life and theology and all of that. And thus, now we're at the podcast, doing this podcast. So, I hear what what all of us are saying, but it's the same kind of complaint that I hear from my people. And I'm just saying, what in the world is keeping you from just saying, let's go to, I mean, as a person who used to live out of Wisconsin, out of Texas and Wisconsin, and all my brothers and sisters were here. When I was coming down, I just basically said, this is where I'm going to be. If you want to be with me, let's get together. And so to me, this gives us an opportunity to ask a question: where could we do that? Why can't we do it without the institutional push to administrate and agendize everything? Let's go to heart. I need my brothers and sisters in Christ who do this work with me. I need to see them face to face. So anyway,
And
I just moved into.
That's my critique. I mean, I have those places. I've got several groups that I meet with,
Right.
that are clergy, but we're going to spend, I think the schedule is something like 24 hours, and
At least.
and they're trying to build in some of that. And that's hard. And I appreciate and applaud that's being attempted. But at this point, that's just, to me, that's more stress inducing than me working my program on my own. And I think we could get the business of the conference done in a lot shorter period of time. And if that's what we have to default to while we're in this situation, I think we got to be just because we did it this long and this way before doesn't mean we have to do that now. And I know they've shortened it up a little bit, but anyway, that's kind of, I guess, aside from the topic we were talking about.
Well, no,
that's
so
what gets me a little. That's what gets
it touches. It touches.
Sitting in a Zoom meeting for
connected.
24 hours gets me exhausted before I even show up.
It's an example that comes out of our experience. And what it reminds me is, that's just one example, but it goes back to what we said just earlier, that, I believe the church is in the greatest position to lead the rest of the world in avoiding burnout, right? The text I'm using this weekend is Luke's ascension text. And after Jesus ascends, he says that the disciples went off together.
Mm-hmm.
They were filled with joy, right? And they continually praised God and blessed God in the temple. Anyway, they were doing these things together. And I think that's our example. That's our witness. And there's so many ways that we can do that instead of what we've been used to, the business-like model. We can return to and rediscover the sense of fellowship, true fellowship that God designed and intended for the church, and let that be the example of joy, so that we can address these other elements of burnout to keep people, or to help people not fall into them, so that they can have the joy of life, right? And certainly not make the church be another place where people feel stressed out, feel like their time is not valued, and they're just doing somebody else's bidding, right? Pastor, you're telling me to do this, so I have to do this, right? Because you want me to. There's so much more life-giving things when it comes to kingdom work. So anyway, that is, talking about annual conference. That's our example of that, and I'm sure anybody who's listening probably has their own example of the need to change the environment, or what could be changed about an environment to avoid burnout and all the things associated with it. And so hopefully that's a helpful platform to get people started thinking about what that looks like. And if you're not burnout, stop saying you are. Don't take a nap.
Yeah.
Go take a nap or get some ice cream or something. Stop it. So anyway, all right.
Eat a Snickers bar.
Eat a Snickers. You're not you when you're hungry, right?
That's right. That's right.
I love those commercials. Anyway, so that's about it for us. Better wrap it up. We are in overtime, so that's okay. Guys, thank you so much for the gift of your time. I appreciate all your insight. It's good stuff. Thank you all for listening. If there's anything you want us to talk about, anything you want to tell us, send us an email or a message on Facebook. We'll be more than happy to respond as best we can. And until next time, we'll get Wade vaccinated. Actually, no, Wade won't be here next time. He'll be out. He's gone. He's going to go.
He's taking a vacation.
Yes, he's going to
avoid burnout.
Unburned out. And so,
that's right.
Anyway, so Braid.
George, Harvey, whatever. I answered all of them.
I just put
Wade,
Brad and
Tim.
Wade together. Brad, Wade,
Yes, sir.
Tom, thank you all for your time. Gabby,
Bravo, ta.